Nellie Choy Wong holds the title of the first Chinese woman to publish a Chinese cookbook in America. But honestly, this title is the least interesting thing about her because her life is just one hell of a story. In today's episode, I hope more people get to know about Nellie Choy Wong. Hi, my name is Christy, and this is the American Chinese Food Show. Nellie Choy Wong was a pioneer of many things. She is the first Chinese woman to become a pharmacist in America, having graduated with high honors at Columbia. She went back to China to be the head of the Department of Pharmacy of the Church General Hospital in Wuchang, which is Wuhan today. Nellie had big dreams wanting to establish a college in China and to teach Chinese women pharmacy. You would think Nellie's a daughter of some rich merchant who had money to flaunt and wanted an educated daughter for show. Nothing could be further from the truth. The first time Nellie Choy Wong showed up on national newspapers in America was when she entered a travel trip contest in 1911 in Honolulu. The candidates with the highest votes got featured in the newspaper with a life story. This is how we learn of Nellie's beginning. Stolen from her parents in China when only 8 years of age and sold into slavery to be brought to Hawaii, was the tragic life beginning of Miss Wong, a young Chinese girl who is one of the bulletin's smiling and hustling trip contestants. In Hawaii, she escaped when she was 14, stayed at the girls' industrial home, and later worked as a domestic help to pay herself to go to Central Grammar School. She won that trip, landed in California, and never looked back. I have always wanted to increase my education by every dignified and honest means, and boy, she wasn't kidding. Nellie was constantly hustling. She set her eyes on LaSalle, the first junior college for women in the country, and wrote a letter asking if she could be admitted to the school with no money except what she could earn. She arrived at LaSalle with only $5. She wrote to her high school librarian in Pasadena to get more magazine subscriptions to pay for school. Just 98 more and I will see the scholarship coming. It is rainy and cold here. She worked in drugstores to pay her way through school pharmacy in New York and eventually graduated from Columbia University in 1920. Even after graduation, she wrote a letter picturesquely describing her attempts to teach pharmacy to two pupils without any apparatus in China to solicit money from the Board of Trustees of the New York College of Pharmacy. She also gave talks touring the country from Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit to Salt Lake City to raise funds with topics like Shantung, the trouble between China and Japan, the commercial development of China, the Chinese movement, to politics in China. The published cookbook was one of her many hustles. Her first cookbook, Chinese Recipes, was published in 1927 and later revised in 1933 as Chinese Dishes for Foreign Homes. The only three women who came before her publishing cookbooks were Jessie Knowlton, a journalist with her own column working out in Chicago, and the Eaton sisters of Chinese-British ancestry, Sarah and Winifred. Nellie's writings were published in magazines and newspapers across the country. While she included chop suey dishes in her book, she made it clear, as for chop suey, you might as well ask them for cheese. If you ask a Chinese cook for chop suey, he looks at you blankly and shakes his head. What she brought was completely different at the time. Balanced meals that are deliberately designed to help people learn about Chinese culture, fundamental Chinese culinary techniques with relatively low barriers, yet with enough Americanization to appeal to the audience. One or two traditional Chinese dishes, one American dish to help make the meal more familiar, then some Americanized pseudo-Chinese dishes that fit more of American dietary customs like a salad. A great example is a Chinese luncheon menu she wrote in 1928. It feels delicate because of the details. For example, there are oranges and apples in hors d'oeuvres, but to specify skin and all for oranges sliced, but skin removed for apples, it feels truly Chinese. Nellie's selection of recipes for Good Housekeeping in 1930 really showed how forward-thinking she was for her time too. First, the transliteration of the dishes is from Mandarin, no longer in Cantonese. The first dish is La Xi Qi, spicy chicken. I believe this is La Ji Ji, dry chili chicken, a famous Chongqing dish from southwestern China. The way to cook this today is with a lot of chili peppers, but the way Nellie did hers, adding onion, green peppers, and pineapples, is still absolutely within the realm of quote unquote being authentic. This is as good a recipe as the ones we see in cooking blogs today. More importantly, this is definitely one of the earliest times we see a non Cantonese recipe in America. The second dish is sha mei mian bao, ha mei min bao, spiced shrimp bread. Nellie wrote it is a really modern Chinese dish, a combination of the East and West. It's what we call shrimp toast today. You smear shrimp paste on toast and deep fry it. It's a special treat for me when I was a kid. Another really well done recipe. Little is known about how Nellie's life ended. The lack of response to open a pharmacy school was discouraging for her. She eventually moved to Beijing, made friends with the high class society to open a drugstore selling perfume and beauty products. She sent LaSalle a small sum of about $100 for a LaSalle and China fund in 1928, but had to ask for it to be returned 10 years later because she was in the hospital with tuberculosis. A missing person location request showed up in 1935 in the Honolulu advertisers. Relatives of the late Nellie Choy Wong, believed to be a Hawaiian-born Chinese who died in Shanghai last year, are being sought by the American consulate in Shanghai in efforts to settle the estate left by the former resident of the islands, according to a letter received from China yesterday. It didn't seem like she was in financial troubles, as the LaSalle book pointed out. She died leaving an estate worth several $1,000s, consisting of stocks and bonds held for her by the Hawaiian Trust, a savings account in the National City Bank of New York, Shanghai branch, and royalties on a book published by her several years ago. Relatives who may become the heirs to the estate are asked to communicate with Colonel Dunham. I guess no one showed up because a First Circuit Court notice was published in 1956 of her estate. I will end this episode with a quote from Nellie Choy Wong in a talk in Salt Lake City in 1920. There are still many difficulties encountered by women in their onward steps toward modern feminism. It is only after a girl has shown exceptional ability that she is encouraged to step from the beaten track. That's it for today's episode. If you like our content, subscribe to the channel. See you soon.